Keanu Reeves sat in the back seat of a small taxi, staring out the window at the rain falling against the glass. The city looked blurred, like a painting left out in the storm. He had just finished visiting a young boy who had been in a terrible accident. The boy's mother had written him a letter months ago, never expecting him to read it. But Keanu did. He read every letter fans sent him, especially the ones that came from people who seemed to have no one left to turn to. He leaned forward and asked the driver to stop. The hospital was not fancy. It was old, bricks worn down by years of weather, and footsteps. The sign was flickering. Some letters didn't light up anymore. Keanu walked inside, his shoulders hunched, a simple baseball cap pulled down to hide his face. He liked it that way. No one needed to know he was there. He wasn't there for the cameras. He was there because he cared. When he reached the boys' room, he knocked softly. Inside, he found the mother sitting by the bed, holding her son's tiny hand. The boy's breathing was shallow, but his eyelids fluttered when Keanu stepped closer. The mother gasped, covering her mouth with her free hand. Tears ran down her face, mixing with the exhaustion she had carried for weeks. Keanu just sat with them, holding the boy's other hand, telling him stories in his calm, deep voice. He didn't want thanks. He just wanted the boy to feel hope. After a while, a nurse came in. She looked tired too, the kind of tired that runs deeper than sleep. She glanced at Keanu, her eyes widening when she realized who he was. Then she whispered that visiting hours were over. Keanu nodded, stood up, and squeezed the mother's shoulder. He turned to leave, but as he stepped into the hallway, two security guards appeared out of nowhere. They didn't know him. They didn't care. They only saw a man who had broken the rules. "Sir, you can't be here," one guard said sharply. "Visiting hours ended half an hour ago." Keanu tried to explain, his voice calm and gentle. "I was just sitting with the boy. He needed. Rules are rules." The other guard snapped. "You have to leave." One guard took him by the arm, not harshly but firmly enough to make it clear. Keanu didn't fight back. He let himself be led through the hallway, past the nurses who looked away, embarrassed. He saw the mother peek out from the room, her eyes wide and sad, but she said nothing. Keanu smiled at her to let her know it was okay. Kindness was not about how you were treated. It was about how you chose to treat others, even when they didn't. Understand. As they reached the front entrance, the rain still fell hard outside. One of the guards pushed open the heavy doors and gestured for Keanu to step out. "Don't come back without permission," the guard muttered. The door closed behind him with a loud thud, cutting him off from the warmth inside. Keanu stood in the rain, his coat growing damp. He looked up at the old hospital sign, the flickering letters spelling out a name that stirred something deep in his memory. He had seen that name before, years ago. Something didn't feel right. The name on the sign matched one of the foundations he had started long ago, hidden behind layers of charity work he never took credit for. He pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling not from the cold but from the sudden rush of realization. He dialed his lawyer, waiting as the phone rang in his ear. When the voice on the other end finally answered, Keanu's voice was quiet but steady. "I need you to check something for me," he said. "This hospital, do we own it?" The line was silent for a moment, then the lawyer spoke. "Yes, Keanu. The trust you set up owns the majority share. You are the silent benefactor." Keanu let out a small, breathless laugh. He looked at the hospital again, the place that had just thrown him out like an unwanted stranger. He thought about the boy inside, the mother's tired eyes, the nurses, working double shifts with broken equipment and low pay. He thought about the guards who didn't know any better, following orders they were given by managers who had long forgotten what kindness looked like. In that moment, standing in the cold rain, Keanu made a decision. He would not storm back in with anger or pride. He would not yell or demand apologies. Instead, he would go back home, sit down with his team, and make sure that hospital, his hospital, would become a place of hope again, a place where no child would be turned away, no mother would feel alone, and no good heart would ever be pushed out into the rain. He turned away from the hospital doors, his face wet with rain but his eyes clear. Behind him, the flickering sign buzzed weakly, but Keanu knew that soon it would shine bright again. Because sometimes the greatest acts of kindness begin when you're standing alone, cold and unwelcome, yet still determined to do what is right. Keanu Reeves sat alone in his small kitchen that night, a cup of tea growing cold in his hands. The rain outside had not stopped, but inside his mind, a storm of thoughts was already brewing. He kept replaying the look on that mother's face, the boy's small fingers gripping his hand, the cold push of the security guards. It was not anger that filled him. It was something deeper, a quiet promise that things would change. He picked up a pen and notebook. He liked to write things down the old way. It made him feel connected, real. On the first page he wrote in simple letters, "Fix the hospital." Below that, he listed everything he could think of. New equipment, better pay for nurses, more beds for children who needed them. He even scribbled a note to add a small garden on the roof, a place where families could sit under the sun, where hope could feel real in the middle of pain. The next morning, Keanu called his lawyer again. This time he asked for the hospital director's contact. The lawyer hesitated. "Keanu, you know they don't really see you as the owner. You're just the silent owner. They run the place their way." "Not anymore," Keanu said softly but firmly. "It's time they remember why we started this in the first place." By noon, he was on his way to the hospital's main office building, no cap to hide his face. This time, he walked into the director's office with quiet steps. The room smelled of stale coffee and expensive perfume. Behind a large polished desk sat a man who had never met Keanu in person, but who had used his money for years. The director stood up quickly, eyes wide. "Mr. Reeves, this is unexpected. What brings you here?" Keanu looked around the fancy office. Soft chairs, tall bookshelves, a carpet so thick his shoes sank into it. He thought about the broken sign outside, the leaking ceilings, the nurses who went home crying because they didn't have enough staff. He turned his eyes back to the director. "I came to talk about the hospital," he said. His voice was calm, but the air in the room changed. "I was kicked out last night. They didn't know who I was, and that's fine, but they didn't know who that boy was either. They didn't know the mother. They didn't care. That's not what this place is supposed to be." The director stammered, trying to smile. "Sir, there are policies. Policies don't heal people," Keanu said. He sat down, leaning forward. "I want to see the real numbers, not the reports you send to the board, the real budget, the maintenance list, the staff complaints. I want to see every patient feedback form. I want to know where the money is going and why it's not reaching the people who need it." The director swallowed, his hands shaking as he reached for a folder. Keanu watched him carefully, the way an old friend might watch someone who had forgotten their promise. He knew people got comfortable, power made them soft, but kindness made people strong. This place had lost its kindness. Over the next hour, Keanu flipped through stacks of paper. Unpaid bills, equipment orders stuck in pending for months, complaints from nurses about unsafe conditions. He asked simple questions, and every answer made the air feel heavier. When he stood up to leave, he didn't raise his voice. He just placed his hand on the director's shoulder. "You can do better," he said quietly. "And if you can't, I will find someone who can." Walking back through the hallways, he noticed how dull everything looked. Faded paint, broken tiles, a tired janitor mopping a floor that would never shine. Keanu stopped and talked to the janitor, asked him about his day, his family. The old man's eyes lit up when he spoke about his granddaughter who wanted to be a nurse one day. Keanu listened, really listened, like he had all the time in the world. When he stepped outside again, he called his team. "I want a meeting with every department head. Tonight, no excuses. We start fixing this now." That evening, they gathered in a small community hall near the hospital. Doctors, nurses, cleaners, volunteers. Some came with suspicion, others with hope. They had never seen the famous actor up close like this, standing before them with a notepad in hand, wearing a simple sweater and jeans. No cameras, no press, just him. And then Keanu spoke softly. "I know you're tired. I know you've been asked to do so much with so little. That ends here. From tonight, you have my word that we will make this a place you're proud to work in again, a place where patients feel safe, a place where no one is turned away." A young nurse stood up, her voice shaking. But how? The money never comes. They promise, but nothing changes. Keanu nodded. The money is there. It just needs to go to the right places. And you are the right places. The people, not the carpets, not the big offices. You. Someone clapped, then another. Soon the small hall filled with the sound of tired hands clapping. Not because they believed it was all fixed, but because, for the first time in years, they felt someone truly saw them. Later that night, when everyone had gone home, Keanu stayed behind. Sitting alone under the buzzing light, his notebook was filled with scribbles, arrows, ideas. But the biggest thing he wrote, right at the top of the page, were the words kindness is the cure. He looked up at the dark window, his own reflection staring back at him. He knew it would not be easy. He knew he would face resistance, excuses, maybe even betrayal. But he also knew that sometimes the hardest doors to open were the ones that had been closed the longest. And Keanu was ready to knock, again and again, until every door opened. The next few days tested Keanu in ways he hadn't expected. The news about him owning the hospital started to spread, though not because he announced it himself. The staff whispered about it in the corridors, surprised that the same man who was thrown out into the rain was now sitting with them, asking questions no one else bothered to ask. Keanu spent every morning walking through the wards. He spoke to nurses while they changed sheets. He sat with patients waiting alone. He shook hands with the janitors, the cooks, the ambulance drivers. Each time he asked them the same simple question: what do you need to make this better? Some people didn't trust him at first. They thought he was like the others, someone who would promise change and then disappear behind locked office doors. But then they saw him roll up his sleeves and help push a broken stretcher down a hallway. They saw him take notes when the single mother working in the cafeteria spoke about the food shortages. They saw him eat the same stale sandwich from the vending machine. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to feel what they felt. In a dusty storage room on the 3rd floor, Keanu found boxes of donated supplies, some never even opened. He asked the head nurse why. She shrugged sadly. The director said we didn't have the budget to hire more people to sort them, so they sit here. Keanu opened a box. Inside were brand new blankets, still wrapped in plastic. He carried an armful down the hallway himself, handing them out to patients who shivered in thin sheets. An old woman grabbed his hand, her eyes bright with tears. "God bless you, son," she whispered. Her words stayed with him long after he left her room. By the end of the week, Keanu called another meeting. This time he invited not just the staff but patients' families too. They sat together in the hospital's tiny cafeteria, chairs pushed close, people clutching cups of cheap coffee. Keanu stood at the front, no stage, no fancy microphone, just him and a whiteboard with the word hope written in the middle. "We need to rebuild this hospital from the inside out," he said. "And we can't do that without you." A young father stood up, holding his daughter's hand. She wore a faded hospital gown, her small head bald from chemo. The father's voice cracked. "My daughter has been here for weeks. Sometimes we can't get the medicine she needs on time. They say it's too expensive." Keanu walked over and knelt beside the girl, looking her in the eyes. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Emma," she whispered. "Emma, I promise you we're going to fix this. You deserve better than this." The father wiped his tears, a small spark of trust in his tired eyes. Other families spoke too. A mother who slept on the floor because there weren't enough chairs. An old man whose wife had passed away while waiting for surgery. Each story carved itself into Keanu's heart. After everyone had spoken, he took a deep breath. "We're going to start with the basics," he said. "No more broken beds, no more missing blankets. Every person who walks through these doors should feel safe and cared for." His lawyer and a few trusted team members sat in the back, scribbling notes. They had already started cutting unnecessary costs from the bloated administration, the fancy cars, the expensive catering, the glossy brochures no one read, all gone. That money now went to hire more nurses, fix leaking roofs, buy new equipment. But change made some people angry. One afternoon, as Keanu walked into the staff lounge, he heard two senior administrators whispering, They didn't see him at first. "Who does he think he is?" one of them hissed. "Just because he's famous, he thinks he knows better than us. He's making us look bad," the other said. "If he keeps this up, we're going to lose our bonuses." Keanu didn't confront them. He just stepped inside. Smiling gently, the two men froze, their faces pale. Keanu picked up a leftover coffee cup and rinsed it in the sink. "Good ideas don't care who gets the credit," he said calmly, "but they do care who gets the care." He left the room before they could respond. That night, Keanu found himself back in the same hallway where the security guards had thrown him out. He stood there for a long time, staring at the heavy double doors. A nurse passing by recognized him and stopped. "Reeves," she asked softly, "are you all right?" Keanu turned to her, a tired smile on his face. "Just remembering, sometimes you have to be pushed out to find your way back in." The nurse didn't know what to say. She just nodded and walked on, but inside she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. As Keanu stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was clear, the moon high and bright. He looked up at the old hospital sign again. This time, he didn't see flickering letters. He saw every person's face he had met that week. The tired mothers, the frightened fathers, the brave children. They deserved more than broken promises. They deserved a place that felt like healing. And he was going to give it to them. Keanu Reeves woke up before dawn, a soft gray light spilling through his window. The city was still sleeping, but his mind was wide awake. The hospital had become more than just a place he funded from a distance. It was now part of him. Each patient's story etched into his thoughts. He knew that fixing the hospital's surface problems was only the beginning. What truly needed healing was the way people treated each other inside those walls. He arrived at the hospital early that morning. This time, he didn't use the main entrance. He walked through the back, where the deliveries came in. He wanted to see the parts no one showed donors. The cramped storage rooms, the understocked kitchens, the laundry room were overworked. Staff cleaned soiled sheets by hand because half the machines were broken. In the laundry room, Keanu found Maria, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and gentle hands. She was folding piles of sheets alone. Keanu stepped closer and greeted her with a warm smile. "Can I help?" Maria looked startled. "Mr. Reeves, you shouldn't be in here." "But you are," he said simply. He rolled up his sleeves and started folding. They worked side by side. As they did, Maria opened up. She told him about her 3 children, how she sometimes worked 16-hour shifts to keep them fed, how she hadn't seen a raise in 5 years. When she spoke, her voice carried a soft strength, the kind that holds a family together through storms. Keanu made a note. More staff for the laundry room, better machines, fair pay. He moved on, spending the whole day like that, helping in the kitchen, sitting with a group of volunteers in the waiting area, listening as they shared stories of fundraising bake sales just to buy toys for the children's ward. Every story was another piece of the puzzle, another way to bring back the heart the hospital had lost. That evening, a board meeting was called. Word had gotten around that some powerful people on the board were not happy with the changes Keanu was making. They didn't like losing their perks, their private parties, and unnecessary expenses. Some whispered that he was naive, too soft to make real change. When Keanu entered the boardroom, he could feel the tension like a cold wind. Expensive suits, polished shoes, stiff smiles. They tried to act polite, but he saw the discomfort in their eyes. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Reeves, we appreciate your passion, but we must talk about boundaries. Some of your decisions are unconventional." Keanu leaned forward, his voice calm but unwavering. "Like paying our nurses properly, or feeding patients fresh food instead of vending machine snacks." A woman in pearls spoke up sharply. "This is not Hollywood, Mr. Reeves. You can't just play hero here." Keanu didn't flinch. "You're right, it's not Hollywood. It's real life, real people, real suffering, and real kindness. That's what this hospital was built for. Not your bonuses, not your perks. People." The room fell silent. Someone shifted uncomfortably. The chairman cleared his throat again. "You can't just dismantle years of policy overnight." Keanu looked around the table. "Then maybe it's Time for new people who can. The words hung in the air like a warning bell. Some board members exchanged glances, realizing the balance of power had shifted. They had forgotten something important, that the man they thought was just a silent donor was, in truth, the heart that kept this place alive. After the meeting, Keanu didn't go home. He walked through the hospital corridors alone, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. He knew the pushback would grow stronger. Some people would leave, some would try to stop him. But deep inside, he believed that what he was doing was right. He stepped into the children's ward. The lights were dim, but soft music played from a small radio. Emma, the little girl with the bald head, was awake. Her father sat by her bed, half asleep, his hand resting on hers. Keanu knelt beside her bed. "Hey, Emma," he whispered. "How are you feeling?" She smiled weakly. "Better. Daddy said you're going to fix everything." Keanu felt a lump in his throat. "We're going to try our best." Emma reached out and touched his hand. Her tiny fingers were warm. "Promise, promise," Keanu said. He sat there for a while, watching her drift back to sleep. Her father looked up, his eyes tired but grateful. "Thank you," he said. Keanu shook his head. "No, thank you for trusting me." As he left the children's ward, he noticed the old hospital sign outside the window. The broken letters still flickered in the night, but now they didn't feel like a symbol of failure. They felt like a sign of what could be healed. On his way out, he paused by the front doors, the same doors where he had once been pushed out into the rain. He placed his hand on the cold glass, his reflection staring back at him. He remembered the boy's small hand, the mother's tears, Maria's folded sheets, Emma's soft promise. It all reminded him of something he had always believed. True kindness is quiet, patient, and relentless. It does not wait for permission. It keeps going, even when the doors slam shut. And Keanu knew, no matter how many doors closed, he would keep knocking until they opened wide for everyone. Asterisk weeks turned into months. The hospital slowly began to change. It wasn't a quick fix, and Keanu knew it wouldn't be. Every small step forward came with resistance, but also with moments that reminded everyone why they kept fighting. Keanu's first move had been to replace the old flickering sign with a new one. Not some grand marble monument, but a simple sign that read Hope General Hospital in warm, welcoming lights. Families passing under it at night now felt something different. That maybe this place wasn't just walls and beds, but a promise. Inside, new beds arrived. The broken ones were taken out and donated to places that could repair and reuse them. Fresh paint covered the peeling walls. A local artist, whose son was once a patient, painted bright murals in the children's wing. Butterflies and rainbows now danced across the walls, making the long days feel just a little lighter for the kids who had to stay. One afternoon, Keanu walked through the pediatric ward with Maria from the laundry room. He wanted her to see what her small stories had inspired. She held his arm, eyes wide as she saw the new playroom filled with toys, books, and colorful beanbags. "You did this," she whispered. Keanu smiled. "No, you did. You told me what needed fixing." News of the changes started to spread beyond the hospital walls. People in the community who had given up on the place now wanted to help. Local businesses donated food and fresh produce. A bakery delivered warm bread every morning. High school students raised money for new wheelchairs. One elderly man even walked in with a jar of coins, saving pennies for years, just to give something back. But not everyone was happy. Some of the old board members tried to block Keanu's plans. They said he was spending too much on unnecessary things: a small rooftop garden for patients, extra blankets for families staying overnight, hot meals for the night shift staff. They called these things wasteful. Keanu called them kindness. He gathered the staff one evening in the same community hall where he'd first spoken to them. The room was brighter now, newly painted by volunteers. People sat closer together, no longer just co-workers but friends bound by a common hope. Keanu stood in front, holding up a folder filled with numbers and charts. He could see the fear in some faces, fear that the changes would be undone by people clinging to old power. "I know some people think we're wasting money," he said. His voice was soft but carried through the hall. "But I see it differently. When we buy blankets, we buy comfort. When we serve hot meals, we serve dignity. When we pay people fairly, we grow loyalty. We're not wasting anything. We're investing in what truly heals. A nurse raised her hand. But they say they'll cut funding if you don't stop. Keanu looked around the room, meeting every tired, hopeful eye. Then let them, he said. We'll find another way. We'll hold fundraisers, bake sales, car washes if we have to. We'll remind this community that this hospital belongs to them too, and no one can take that away. There was a moment of quiet. Then a janitor stood up. He was the same old man Keanu had spoken to on that rainy night. He took off his cap and held it to his chest. You made us feel seen again, Mr. Reeves, he said, his voice cracking. We'll stand with you, whatever happens. Others stood too, the nurses, the kitchen workers, the security guard who once pushed Keanu out into the rain. He stepped forward now, shame and resolve mixing in his eyes. I didn't know who you were back then, he said, but now I do. I'm sorry for that night. Keanu walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. You were doing your job. Now we do ours, together. In the weeks that followed, some old board members resigned when they realized they could no longer siphon money for themselves. Keanu brought in new people, not rich investors, but community leaders, retired nurses, even a former patient's father. People who cared more about people than profit. Meanwhile, Keanu still showed up every day. He carried boxes of donated clothes to the family rooms. He shared tea with grieving families. He sat in late meetings planning ways to cover new treatments. Insurance wouldn't touch. One night, long after visiting hours ended, Keanu found himself back in Emma's room. She was asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling under a warm new blanket. Her father sat nearby, eyes closed, finally getting some rest of his own. Keanu pulled a chair closer and just sat there. The hum of medical machines was the only sound. He thought about the first night he was thrown out, how small he had felt, how easy it would have been to walk away. But he did in single quotes T. And now, sitting beside this small girl and her sleeping father, he realized the truth. Sometimes the greatest doors don't just swing open for you. You push, you knock again and again. You stay when it's easier to leave. Keanu leaned back, looking out the small window. Outside, the hospital's new sign glowed softly in the dark. Hope General Hospital, not just a name, but a promise he would keep. Months passed, and the hospital that once felt cold and forgotten slowly bloomed into something new. The walls still held scars, some leaks still dripped, some machines still coughed with age, but the people inside carried something stronger than any paint or new equipment could offer. Hope. Keanu Reeves stayed close, never acting like a hero, just another pair of hands trying to make things better. He was there the day the old cafeteria was turned into a bright community kitchen, where patients' families could share a meal together instead of eating alone. He stood next to Maria from the laundry room when they cut the ribbon for the rooftop garden she had dreamed of. She cried when she saw rows of flowers blooming beside benches where patients could sit in the sun, breathe fresh air, and remember what life felt like beyond hospital walls. The community started to see the hospital as more than a place to heal bodies. It became a place to heal hearts too. Local artists painted the maternity ward with gentle murals of mothers and babies. Students came every weekend to read stories to the children's wing. People who had once turned their backs now brought donations or volunteered to serve warm meals at night. One rainy afternoon, Keanu was standing at the reception desk, going through paperwork with a new volunteer coordinator when he noticed a young man arguing with the security guard near the entrance. The man's clothes were soaked through, his face pale and frightened. Keanu walked over calmly. Is everything all right? The guard explained, a bit embarrassed. This man says he needs to see his wife. But visiting hours ended. Keanu looked the young man in the eyes, seeing fear and love all mixed together. Tell me what happened, he said softly. My wife, she's in labor. I got stuck at work. I didn't make it on time. I have to be with her. Please. Keanu glanced at the guard, who was already stepping aside. Rules were rules, but humanity was bigger. Keanu guided the young man down the hallway himself. even though he didn't have to dot at the maternity ward. Door, the young man turned, tears mixing with the rain on his cheeks. "Thank you. I don't even know who you are." Keanu just smiled. "It doesn't matter. Go to her." He stood there for a moment after the man went inside. He thought about that night he was forced out, how small he'd felt, and he felt a quiet pride that this place, his hospital, would never again treat a person like they didn't belong. Later that night, Keanu gathered the night shift staff in the tiny break room. They were drinking cheap coffee, yawning. Through another long shift, he sat down on the old sofa and looked around at their tired but hopeful faces. "We did this," he said. "Not just me, all of us. We turned a broken place into a home. I know it's not perfect. I know we still have work to do. But every day, we're proving something important. Kindness is stronger than any locked door. It always finds a way." And a nurse spoke up, her voice soft. "What happens next?" Keanu smiled, his eyes shining with a gentle light. "Next, we keep going. We keep caring. We keep fighting for every patient who walks through those doors. And we remind the world that no one gets left out in the rain again." Someone started to clap, then another. The small break room filled with the sound of hands coming together, not for a celebrity, but for the truth they all now believed in, that kindness was not a thing you gave when it was convenient. It was a promise you kept, even when no one was watching. As dawn broke outside, Keanu stood at the same front entrance where it had all started. He looked at the glowing sign, Hope General Hospital, and then at the people inside moving through the halls. Nurses with warm blankets, volunteers with fresh meals, guards holding doors open for fathers running late. He stepped out into the morning light, feeling the warmth of the rising sun. A light drizzle fell, but this time he didn't mind. He had learned something simple yet powerful. You don't own kindness. You become it through every small act, every soft word, every open door. And though he was once kicked out, now he belonged there more than ever, not as an owner, but as a reminder that real hope is built one act of kindness at a time.